Welcome, welcome, everybody. We'll give it just a couple minutes here for people to join us. So excited today to have not one, not two, but three different startups represented here. And this is arguably our most diverse conversation we're going to have yet across carbon dioxide removal, coastal resilience, and Web3, which we've been hinting at for some time. We've been excited to get into with our first co-created startup. But more importantly, we have some awesome founders who we're excited to introduce. And at the same time, we have just a little bit of news. If you haven't heard, I just came back from Monaco, and we are officially the recipients of this year's Prince's Prize for Innovative Philanthropy. And I have a 15-pound or so trophy in my corner over there. But more importantly, just ecstatic to put Seaworthy on the global map for the work that we're doing here. Thank you, Rachel, for the reaction there. But before we jump in today, we are going to be announcing tomorrow our official startup showcase, our biggest event of the year, happening on July 15th. We are having all sorts of fun with venue logistics, but we do have a couple venues that have committed to that date, so we will be finalizing that announcement tomorrow. And beyond that, other than that, we're just excited to have everybody here, and we have one more of these Startups for Sea Change panels coming up in July. But until then, we're excited to just jump in today and introduce you guys to Brenna Bales and Reefvitalize. We have Ryan Sedegat and Jordan Gluck with Seashell, and Nelson Pilgerin with Lily One. And we're just going to jump in and have everybody introduce themselves and share a little bit about their work. So why don't we kick it off with Brenna? Brenna, you want to jump in? Oh, you're on mute.
Hey, sorry, I was just pulling up my notes here.
All good.
Hey everyone, my name is Brenna. I'm the founder of Reefvitalize. Pre-COVID, I worked at a luxury resort in the Maldives, leading citizen science coral restoration activities, but I found tons of issues with the program overall. I came back to the US and began working in operations to learn how to create my own version of this program, and now remotely manage operations for over 25 million in real estate assets across the US, hoping to take this expertise and experience to my startup. Sorry, there's a very loud motorcycle in the background. My apologies. So we are scaling ocean conservation through commercialized coral restoration activities in the tourism industry, because current philanthropic efforts are neither scalable nor impactful enough to make the large-scale changes that we want and need to see. And currently, you have to be a scientist or a scuba diver to be able to take part in coral restoration efforts. There is no restoration in the Caribbean effort currently that is accessible to every traveler, no matter their background or skill level. So it works by leveraging tourists to create inspirational and memorable coral restoration activities at resorts, letting tourists build their own mini coral reefs. We also create partnerships with existing coral restoration nonprofits, expanding their efforts while being able to cut the red tape on our side by utilizing their already approved permits. So overall, we aim to be collaborative instead of competitive to these local ecosystems that are already set up. We have a triple bottom line aiming to impact tourists, the marine ecosystem, and local communities. So we have existing hotels and nonprofits in clustered areas across the Caribbean right now, including Hopkins, Belize, the US Virgin Islands, and the Bahamas interested in our efforts. And we're ironing out our methodology for each site. It's tailored to be customized for each location, and discussing licensing some existing technologies to launch quicker.
Awesome. Thanks, Brenna. I see Nelson, you're already introducing yourself in the chat, so why not jump on in?
Yes, sir. Hi, everybody. My name is Nelson David Bulgarin. I'm the founder and CEO of Lily One Technology. We are a climate change solutions through olivine dissolution for ocean alkalinity and carbon dioxide removal. The concentrations of CO2 in Earth's atmosphere is currently near 412 parts per million and rising. This represents a 47% increase since the beginning of the industrial age. Lily One technology is a solution for carbon collection and sequestration at a megaton scale. Enhanced weathering of silica rocks such as olivine has been proposed as a large-scale climate engineering approach. When implemented in a coastal environment, olivine weathering is expected to increase seawater alkalinity through resulting in additional CO2 uptake from the atmosphere. Our company intends to create a new and verifiable CDR solution for the ocean and the agricultural sector. Our technology increases the dissolution of olivine, leveraging ocean upper layers. Our system also removes harmful metals before this solution to mitigate local ecosystem contaminants. Some of our potential markets are ocean alkalinity enhancement, ocean acidification, color fertilizers, and raw metals sales. This combined accounts for over $13 trillion in market opportunities. Lily One technology is now in TR level 5 with a prototype under construction for future certification. We are currently seeking for advisors, sponsors, and grant opportunities to help us to get to TR level 9. In conclusion, Lily One technology is scalable, permanent, efficient, cost-efficient, and safe. And we are intending to be part of the portfolio of companies helping with climate change by capturing and sequestering CO2 in a carbon negative manner. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Nelson. And last but not least, we are unveiling our first of our 2 co-created startups with Ryan and Jordan and Seashell. Ryan and Jordan, go ahead.
Ryan, you want to start off?
Yeah, I'll start off. So I'm Ryan, and I'm co-founding Seashell with Jordan, as well as Seaworthy. And our startup is basically, we are trying to tokenize the impact of regenerative coastal resilience infrastructure. And we do that mainly through Web3 technology. And yeah, Jordan, you want to step in for Web3?
Absolutely. I hope everyone is well. Calling here from Union Square, Manhattan. So my apologies for the delay on video. Just trying to find one of the benches where somebody isn't smoking a joint for the purpose of this call. So a little bit on my background. So my parents met at Jordan Belcher's house at Fire Island. I was born here in Manhattan, raised in South Florida over there. Following my master's program, I started a few real estate investment banks here in Manhattan, working on some of the largest, more, I guess, sexiest deals, both here in the city and around the world, for creating a sport gambling company. And then I found this opportunity. I always wanted to do something to both help the environment and also create some pretty substantial revenues for the company and investors. And I think this is one of them. So this is a way to merge Web3 and coastal resiliency. To be clear, Web3 is going to impact all industries, so not just this one. It's not a unique specific case. But I do think that it's one that is more easily applicable and it's the ability to catch on much quicker. And by doing this, we're going to be able to protect our coast, create value for individual investors, as well as local state county governments, as well as also parks and communities, and create a viable engine to create revenue for investors. So a little bit about me. And
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jordan. Well, with that, we're going to jump into our predetermined questions here, and then from there we'll open it up at the end of the Q&A. So if you'd like, you can always put your questions in the chat, and we'll go from there. But with that, I'll kick us off. So our first question, which I will throw to Nelson, is how do you see carbon dioxide removal, sequestration, and decarbonization evolving as blue tech sectors? And then I'll go over to Brenna to discuss coastal resilience.
Hello. Good.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah. I was thinking about the question about the interpolation of land and ocean fields. I mean, it's extremely important these days on, I think, in the form of agriculture. We also already are implementing offshore wind farms, and we are also proving the importance of robotics in marine environments. So I think it's extremely important to start thinking about how to connecting the land and the ocean in a more efficient and broad manner. So definitely, I think is a plus.
And as far as some of the future for coastal resilience in blue tech, Brenna, curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think with the emergence of the blue tech sector, it's making these issues, carbon dioxide removal, sequestration, decarbonization, coastal resilience, all those things, it's making it more competitive in terms of financial valuation. So the greatest issues that humanity is facing right now, how do we feed 8 going on 9 billion people? How do we power their homes? Blue tech is trying to answer these questions by putting the ocean to work, and this is our greatest resource. So it's solving for these issues using the ocean while maintaining the concept of profitability for the current system that we operate on. So it's like you always say, Daniel, it's doing well by doing good.
I do have some favoritism toward that line. And Ryan, how about you? And then I'll throw it to Jordan.
Yeah, if I could just carry on with that thought that Brennan brought up about the ocean being very valuable. A lot of what we do at Seashell is valuing ecosystem services and coastal resilience and prescribing that value so investors can capitalize on it and promote nonprofit activity. So that's really important. But yeah, Jordan.
Absolutely. Well, I thought Ryan probably said it best over there. So I'll leave that on off to him.
All right, thanks, Jordan. Well, I'll move on to our next question. And this is, to me, just an opportunity to connect some of the dots of the work you guys are doing. So what do you guys see as far as, not only Web3, but also other opportunities for growing support for your regenerative projects and the overall blue economy? And I'll throw it over to Nelson to kick us off again.
Yes, I think new technologies bring new, almost lost. So in order for us to set up a new set of laws for new technologies and new implementations through these markets are extremely valuable. So when you start looking at, for example, a Stripe and Frontier, the way they are starting to connect with Pure, and you start seeing Pure Earth, I think is that Pure. And however, it's extremely important. You start seeing that now that they're creating an environment for companies like us to join and to get certification efficiently, and they know exactly what they're looking for instead of waiting for a whole new procedure of government laws to change or start. So I think it's important because the people that then starting these movements are people that know what they're doing. It's not just a couple guys. It's now starting from Microsoft to Meta and getting through everybody who has a certain power and action into it. So I love it. I think it's really relevant, and I think I will be part of the group of people joining that adventure of Web3.
Awesome. And I was going to say, I feel like, specifically Nelson, in your side of the fence, it's really this opportunity of the Web 2.0 voluntary carbon credits, in addition to some of these emerging Web3 carbon credits we're seeing like Klima. I'm going to throw it over to Brenna. It's a similar question. What opportunities do you see for support for regenerative projects like yours and the overarching blue economy?
Well, I am still learning a lot about Web3 and blockchain technologies. Daniel has been a huge force behind my motivation to learn more about it. But I think for me, it's two-sided. One is making all of this more eco-friendly. I know there's a huge energetic load on our planet for especially cryptocurrencies. There's emerging green cryptocurrencies, but I think all of that needs to be thought through and solved for before we can focus on how best to utilize it for regenerative projects. Saying that, I do think there are some really cool opportunities for ownership stakes in ecologically regenerative projects. So if you pay to restore an acre of mangroves on our actual planet, theoretically, could you have digital ownership of that resource and potentially charge people in the metaverse or virtual reality to go and see that or utilize that resource in some way? I feel like, virtual reality tourism is something that I've just become aware of. I think it's super cool. And I think Web3 as a support mechanism for all of this stuff is really interested, and I'm excited just to see where it goes.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, as far as, the corporate engagement side of the work you're doing, is there any, not just the Web3 side, but the corporate side as well? Are you seeing a lot of emerging support there too?
Yeah, we had a conversation with Moon Jelly a few weeks ago, and that conversation made me really optimistic how, hey Jordan, would you mind muting yourself actually? Sorry, it's just a little bit loud on my end here, thanks. Based off that conversation, I definitely have a lot of optimism about corporate engagement with Web3 and that area.
Sorry, I had some issues getting my mute button. Awesome. Well, I'll throw it over to Jordan. I know you were about to jump in, and then Ryan.
Yeah, and again, once again, my apologies for the noise. I probably should have chose a different bench, more secluded in the park. But for this, and I just want to start off with some of the basic stuff. So there's really two mechanisms that cryptocurrency use, which is proof of stake or proof of work. Bitcoin uses proof of work, which is a very energy intensive process, basically to solve codes and in exchange get the coins. Proof of stake is essentially lending out your coins to have sort of skin in the game in exchange for more. That is what Ethereum, for example, is switching to. That is what is obviously now seen as the clear choice for oncoming cryptocurrencies. And that is essentially nearly carbon free. Maybe it has a very small amount of electricity. A lot of that can be done through renewable resources. So I do think that as far as what we're touching, which is on the coastal resiliency side, Web3 allows other people to really see the impacts right away. Part of that is to virtual reality, artificial reality through machine learning, computer vision primarily. Another way is just bare and bones street views that people can see where things have gone over time, and people are rapidly seeing what's happening in places like North Carolina, where homes already are built out of those hills, up on stilts, and continually that is the area that is at first is risk. And for this, it allows people to both put their money where their mouth is. And in the end of the day, listen, we're all going to die. This is a great cause and for our kids. And I think that's true. Not only, yes, we are a profitable company. We're not a 501(c)(3), but it's something that you could both feel in your heart and then as well in the physical reality as well.
Right?
Yeah, if I could just jump in here. Yeah, so as Brennan mentioned, mangroves are a great application of Web3 technology and coastal resilience. And I think we need a steward that prevents artificial scarcity when we go forward with Web3 technologies, especially mangroves. If you want underlying ownership of ecological assets, we don't want to limit them to the world, right? We want to promote them and their proliferation. And so I think that's something to keep in mind going forward in the space. And I think that's something we take serious at Seashell. In addition, I think the main advantage of Web3 is that we're able to respond faster than governments, and we're able to sort of work around government inaction and large corporations and bureaucracy. So I think that's sort of ties into the whole decentralized finance or DeFi aspect as well. And I think that's really something that we should focus on.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
yeah, to you, Ryan.
Yeah.
What do you mean by saying that Web3 can act faster than governments? In what capacities?
Well, so in a lot of ways, if you look at what we're trying to do at Seashell, in the sense that we're trying to move capital from individual investors to either nonprofits to use working capital, or maybe for-profit firms that are working on coastal resilience projects, the economic incentive that is provided using tokenomics makes it so that government bureaucracy and or inaction does not slow down the progress needed. And I think we're really seeing that in Miami. If you go back a couple of years, we had the seawall, I'd say snafu, where Army Corps of Engineers, federal government wanted to come down, and we were worried about sort of the economic costs of rising sea levels, as well as sort of a big, ugly, not so beautiful seawall in Miami River. And so that sort of, a couple years later now, we don't have anything to respond to that. So what we can do is, if we have individuals working together and sort of putting their capital to work, we can get an actual and intentional solution on the ground that actually benefits everyone. I think that's what I'm looking for.
Jordan, you're gonna add something?
Yeah, and there's something in Web3 called DAOs. DAO stands for Digital Autonomous Organization. Basically, it's almost like going back 1,000 years, and it's the active guild of many just individual folks who believe in some sort of positive motion. For example, there was the DAO, the Constitution DAO, that tried to buy one of the 11 known copies of the Constitution and donate to a museum. It was actually bought by Ken Griffin, who donated it to the Crystal Bridges Museum, who, as of today, announced the relocation of Citadel to Miami. While we're at it, so that is going to be able to move quicker than governments are notoriously bureaucracy and laborious process. I was a political science major. I've dealt with enough government. I'm sure that you, Daniel, Tamara, have as well on this side. And by using DAOs and using Web3, we're going to be able to bypass a lot of those processes. Legal, some maybe not. But obviously, we're focused on the legal side because we're a company, and otherwise we'll get sued. But it'll rapidly speed up development on that. So it continues on that. And you heard Chairman Jerome Powell just 2 weeks ago explore some stuff like CDBCs, right, central bank digital currencies, which you wouldn't even think of about a year ago. So things are moving really at the speed of light.
Yeah, and just jumping in there too, the DAO is a really good sort of structure to prevent, I'd say, concentration of power. And when we really want to promote ecological restoration and coastal resilience, we want everyone to have a voice. And so we don't want sort of very concentrated structure of, direction. There was a question in the chat. I don't know if we should answer it from.
We'll get to Q&A at the end. Don't worry. But we like to let them pile up over there. I'm gonna get us back on track, but this has been great, and Brenna, great question. So now let's get back into kind of the individual tech that you guys are working on. What are some of the benefits of your technologies beyond just addressing your current markets or current applications, right? We think about these externalities, or basically bonus multipliers of bringing different solutions together. So I'll throw it back to you, Nelson.
Yes, I was exploring to intensify the agricultural sector because I think we can create a really strong fertilizer that it could potentially help, creating it locally instead of purchasing overseas. And it would be a fertilizer that could help the growth of the crops between 15 and 25%. It would also help with the soils, healthier soils, high levels of CO2 sequestration in that soil. And probably one of the most important connections would be then all this raw water now would be clean, and it would be getting to the ocean much clean than with regular fertilizers. So that's something that we plan to explore later on as another option for the company to keep helping.
Awesome. And how about you, Brenna?
In regards to my technology, I think what I have, the intellectual property I have in terms of coral restoration is not quite as addressable to a larger market, whereas the methodology behind what we're doing is, which is regenerative tourism. So a huge report from booking.com just came out saying that 78% of global travelers intend to stay in a sustainable property at least once in the coming year. So that's almost 80% of travelers, which is way more than I ever thought it would be. I think it's key to tap into this for the circular blue economy. So, taking the idea of regenerative tourism and applying it to stopping pollution, reducing waste, reducing energy consumption. These aren't necessarily related to coral restoration, but all these things in the end benefit coral reefs. So if we can utilize the concepts behind regenerative tourism and create a circular blue economy, then creating that model will help everyone, and it can be motivated by guest and traveler demand.
And I think this is a great point, you know, in showing how we can drive stakeholder engagement too as a bigger piece of the picture, and that it's about bringing people that we wouldn't necessarily expect into this space now, you know, giving them that avenue. So that's a great point. Ryan, how about you guys?
Yeah, so a lot of what we do at Seashell is valuing ecosystem services, and that doesn't just have to be applied to coastal resilience. It can be applied in a lot of areas. And so that's really beneficial for not just us and our partners, but everyone else as we, you know, sort of push the ball further in that realm. In addition, I think it really promotes societal awareness of the sort of value of the blue economy in regards to biodiversity, say water quality, air quality as well, all these things that I think is very important. Also, just on the Web3 aspect, I think we're actually finding a very solid use case for Web3, which is really important to, you know, to push the ball further that aspect. So yeah, I think Jordan, if you want to join in there.
My apologies. There's a band that immediately started playing right as we were talking. So normally that's I'm at my desk. It's not this adventurous, but I guess here we go. So if you could just repeat the question, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the question is, you know, what are some of the benefits of your technologies beyond just addressing kind of the current market or specific application, but thinking beyond like externalities?
The benefits of our Web3 technologies, or the total of the company?
Of Seashell as a basically ecosystem benefit.
Yeah. So what we're doing is going to be able to not only buffer existing values, real estate values on our side, and which will prevent everything, right? Well, the first thing that goes to insurance, you don't have insurance and you can't get a mortgage on the property. Absent those two things, the market collapses. But on top of that, it's going to bring back viability onto the coast. It'll help marine life as well, and buffers on land values. On the Web3, we're doing proprietary. No one's really done this before. No one's ever done this before, frankly. So we're kind of the first ones addressing the coastal resiliency impact. This is something that's going to affect people from the wealthiest areas of the Hamptons to the lower part of Manhattan, all the way across down to Florida and North Carolina. So the total TAM is really enormous on this. And it's the use case for what we could do. And it's regenerative, it's natural, and sustainable. So it's definitely something that I think that is going to happen, whether it's us, whether it's another company, whether it's a grants of governments. The question is who's able to do it best and scale quick enough.
Awesome. Well, I love to say, you know, it's about how can we start to create multi-bottom line returns, right? When we think about not just valuing the ROI or return on investment, which is the traditional returns that people look for, but actually thinking about how we value things like not only coastal resilience, but as we're seeing carbon. So great points there. I'm going to move on to our fourth question, which really gets into the nuts and bolts of Seaworthy, which is how do you see, we talk about, you know, building these systems of solutions that work together and synergistically help build blue economies. So how do you guys see your technologies working in coordination with some of the other solutions, maybe in the cohort or in our network? I'll throw it back to you, Nelson.
Yes, sir. Well, I was really trying to connect. That is actually really possible because when you're talking about, for example, verification, when it comes to all these, I mean, in my case, for example, I'm going to be deploying alkalinity into the ocean, but my equipment requires for me to constantly be checking the ocean, you know, be in contact with the ocean. Physically, I need to go there and make sure that what is happening is really happening, not just the data itself. So these bring elements, for example, like machines that I can use in order to be able to accomplish that. Subs, small subs, then I actually saw online a couple of days ago, then you can actually go and use and physically go down there without, you know, the disturbance that you will have when you snorkel, for example. So there's a lot of new technologies coming out and could help to make sure then what we're doing is safe and it's helping. And I think that's probably the most important way of approaching this. Whatever you see your weakness look of companies, then maybe they are actually applying something, then it could actually help you to fix that weakness. So yeah.
All right. And Brenna, curious for your thoughts.
Well, pretty much everything behind what I'm doing is driven by the desire to coordinate with everyone locally. So I always say that I want to be collaborative instead of competitive. So there's already existing hotel and resorts all over the Caribbean. There's over 100 countries and territories that benefit from coral reef related tourism. So the network already exists, and there's already tons of great people and great organizations doing coral restoration work, but they're mostly focusing on philanthropic efforts and trying to get grant dollars, and overall it's just not a scalable solution. So the model behind what I'm doing is going in and connecting, just, plugging in this existing framework, connecting people to others that are doing incredible work, but they don't quite know how to make it accessible and available to tourists. And I mean, billions of tourists worldwide that would be able to take part in this effort. And my personal experience goes back to a lot of my desire to make it super local, hyper localized efforts, because I was hired as an American with an education to go work in the Maldives and teach about Maldives reefs. But I had no cultural connection to those reefs, and I often felt a big kind of disconnect educating about that area. So that's a huge mission of mine, is to connect things locally.
And I think that's a really important point that is often forgotten when we talk about solving climate change. People get overwhelmed by the size of the problem being a global problem, but this has really got to start at a local community level. So I think that's an awesome point, Brenna, as far as driving these accumulation of local effort to build an overall impact. I'll throw it over to you, Jordan. Oh my gosh, slaying my words today. It's been a long day. Jordan, curious to hear.
It's okay. You can put down the whiskey for a couple minutes. And I want to thank, Brenna on that point. It's something that I, from day one, starting Seashell, that I discussed with Brian, is that our impacts here as far as global warming and climate change, we have to be hyper localized, right? More theory, but right, we're depending on stuff like India and China to stop burning coal. That's not going to happen. So we have to figure out how we could affect things right here, right? Whether that's in South Florida, removing pythons out of the Everglades, getting the invasive lionfish out of the Atlantic Ocean, which is destroying a lot of marine habitats and coral reefs while we're at it. So for us, that's something that really hit at me, right? How do we affect things that are super local? And fortunately, just on the way that the socio-economic fabric of the world is, we're going to probably have to start with higher net worth individuals and wealthier places. Think the Hamptons, Nantucket, South Florida, and Manhattan, rather than those that are critically the most vulnerable. But hopefully we'll be able to expand onto those other areas as we scale and are able to reduce costs.
Just tapping into the sort of income brackets of areas we're working with. While we could definitely work with high income areas, as you would expect on the coast, it is known that sea level rise and coastal erosion is going to disproportionately affect lower income communities. And so stepping in to protect them is really beneficial to everyone. And but yeah. And also going back to Brenna's point about connecting people, I think that's a lot of what we do at Seashell. I think we're connecting people to restoration nonprofits, firms, partners, all to get this done. And so I think that's a lot of what we're doing.
I love how we're hitting the different areas of the triple bottom line, especially the social part of it, because this equity lens in climate is so important and often, unfortunately, left out. So great point there, Ryan. Going to our second to last question, and if you haven't put your questions in the chat, feel free to join in. I saw a couple already in there. So how do you guys see your solution, or even these systems of solution, as we think about how we tie all together, really working to scale and drive broader ocean and climate impact? I know we hit on the community level, but now really thinking big. I'll throw it over to you, Nelson.
Hold on 1 second. What is the question, sir?
Yeah, the question is, how do you see your solution and these systems of solutions as you think about partnering with each other and other solutions, helping to scale and drive broader ocean and climate impact?
Oh, yes, this is what clean solutions with clear paths will have more immediate opportunities. and solutions with a need of verification and or certification could potentially drive their markets, but not before presenting a clear solution with a clear path.
So I mean, to me, I think the biggest thing, especially just for you speaking on the carbon market side, is really to create something that I think what you guys are doing at Lily One is very simple and executable for driving massive scale carbon sequestration now and keeping it simple.
Well, the fact is the verification aspect is way more complex than what most people think, and the reason is because you need to make sure that any kind of environment where the system is going to be deployed, everything is going to be fine. So that to say that it requires a lot of verification. So even if we think then I have everything set to finish, that verification part it will take some time and a lot of effort from everybody's part. So we have everything else set up, but that's what I'm saying. Some other companies, they like director capture, for example, they went in a direction, but they already have that clear path. So I'm in the direction of finding my clear path. So certification is the next step.
Good point there, and definitely it's an evolving field. I'll throw it over to Brenna. How do you see your solution and these systems of solutions scaling and driving ocean and climate impact?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what I've been saying and plugging all along is regenerative tourism. Philanthropic solutions haven't been the answer to this in the past. So COVID was obviously such a huge hit. It hit the tourism industry so hard. And so many of these tourism dependent communities are now looking for ways to, as everyone says, build back better. So I was on a panel, well, I watched a panel, I was on it yesterday with the Regenerative Travel Network, and so many of the hotels and resorts were just looking for solutions on how to build, build sustainably for their resorts and hedge against the risk of environmental and ecological disasters happening. So the framework that we're creating by going back to connecting local people, connecting local efforts, teaching local people and organizations how to partner and better work together. Once that model is nailed down, duplicating it worldwide. So it doesn't have to be just coral restoration. It can be mangrove restoration or seaweed farming or any of these practices that help regenerate local communities and ecosystems. Once you find the model of how to do that right, you can do it anywhere with anything.
And I think that's when we talk about the key to scalability, right? Building that scalable model. So great point there, Brenna. Ryan, throw it over to you.
Yeah, sort of in the same line of thinking. The scalable model is really important, and that's what we're building in the sense that we're going to start working with mangroves first. I don't know if I made that clear. And once we can get that off the ground, we can start moving, and we can move into other areas as well in regards to coastal resilience. And so all of a sudden you have all of these different elements coming together, and we just tie them together through Web3. And that makes it so that if somebody had an individual preference for, say, coral reef restoration, mangrove restoration, seawalls, they could totally go that route. And all of a sudden everything comes together and we have a better overall whole. I think that's one point.
Jordan, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think that's a great point by Ryan. By being able to tie Web3 in it, it's just going to be able to scale so massively and so quickly, frankly. I'm not going to use any of the shit coins that exploded, but even some of the real layer ones, right? Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche is talking about things like Algorand as well. How quickly they're able to touch, people are able to build on these things by using the power of the internet, by using the power of interconnection, frankly. It'll be able to touch in so many other areas. We spoke in the last question about being able to help those that are unfortunately being left out and how to be properly equitable. right? Areas such as Indonesia and Malaysia are going to be the ones that are at first among the highest risk of seeing their communities get impacted. If you didn't know, Indonesia has the 4th largest population in the world. So it's something that really is going to be able to benefit us as we continue to move on the process.
Well, and I think that's part of the the beauty of the solutions that we develop here truly have applications everywhere, and that's one of our core focuses for Seaworthy. So I'm going to get to our last question, and then we'll Q&A. So the question I have for you guys, which I'll throw back to Nelson to start, is what advice do you have for current aspiring blue and climate tech entrepreneurs looking to fight anything from pollution to climate change and even build coast resilience?
When you get that idea, try fast, fail quick, and if you find something that you really care about, do not stop improving it until you feel satisfied.
Love that. Greta?
So my advice comes from the CEO of the company I currently work for. She's a Kendra Scott, found her. The female entrepreneur ecosystem here in Austin is really amazing, and they give great advice. I always try to lead female entrepreneurs over to them. But what she taught me was that, someone might say no to you, but that no is never a definite no. Obviously, focus on partnerships that are beneficial for both of you. If somebody says no to you and you're not feeling it either, obviously don't try to keep pursuing it. But just because somebody says no doesn't mean that you can't take their criticism constructively, iterate, be better, find a solution. You might find other problems within your business model in the process, and then come back to them and try again, and don't give up.
Yeah, that's great advice. Ryan?
Yeah, the best advice I think I can give is sort of my own path. And I think what you need to do is identify a problem. And when you identify a problem, you start looking for the solution to that problem. And then once you find a solution, you start working on it, you start playing with it, fiddle, grow it out, and you get what we have here. In our case, the problem was we weren't getting money to firms working on coastal resilience, and we wanted to do that in a proper manner and quickly. And so that's why we decided to involve Web3, and so start scaling it and growing it out. But yeah, identify the problem and then identify a solution. I think that's the best place to start.
Jordan?
Yeah, I'll give some advice my grandfather told me. 2 things. One, you don't get opportunities very often, and 2, things come in waves. And sometimes it's just more or less. Oh, sorry, there's the graduation course next to me. Sometimes it's more just less the time of man that we live in, where obviously my great-great-grandfather didn't have to deal with this problem on the coast, and we're just confronted with both an issue, but also an opportunity and a way to leave things better than we found it. And this is one of the ways that we could do that and truly mean it. So to me, that's what hits in the heart, other than the chicken liver I had this morning, and be able to keep things moving on.
Well, I think I love getting it back to the doing well and doing good. It does kind of nicely summarize that, which Brenna hit the nail on the head. So I'm going to throw it over to Tamara, who's going to help us kick off our question and answers. She's been diligently monitoring the chat here, so thank you, Tamara, and excited to hear some of our questions.
No problem. Thanks everybody for submitting them. Please keep them coming in the chat. The first one that I noticed was from Serge, a question to Nelson, asking how many tons of CO2 can your technology remove annually, realistically, and how much physical space does the machine take up?
Realistically, we are talking about purchase after prototype. We are thinking about 1,000 tons of olivine purchased, which equals about 1,250 tons of CO2 sequestrated, based on the rate of 1 equals 1.25. Now, what we do is we set up different locations. So if we want to be efficient, 1,000 would be the best starting point, and maximum point would be 10,000. With about 1/4 acre of land in order to have the materials there and everything set up. And as far as the ocean, when you go and you deploy it in the area, probably like 0.5 acres of ocean, you're gonna say in the same number. Because pretty much what we do, we're gonna set it up in the coast where it's gonna be in constant connection with the rocks, and it's gonna have this movement, and it's gonna allow to keep interacting after we're gone. So we create a almost full dissolution in areas that we think we can leave it there, or full dissolution in areas where a small tide is the only way of doing it. So that's where we are, like about 1/4 acre of land, full deployment of 10,000, initially 1,000 to deploy it, which is like about 1,200 tons of CO2 sequestrated.
Thank you, Nelson. And I know, Serge, if you'd like to, feel free to, unmute yourself and if you have any follow-up questions for Nelson. Sorry, I should have offered you that before. Let's see here. The next question, if you want to, Serge, just jump on in here. But the next question came from Prasad, which I think I saw Jordan give him a brief answer, but if you'd like to unmute and ask your question again, or
just introduce yourself,
please.
Yeah, we got Prasad, who's also an Austin local. So Prasad, you want to jump in?
No, that's 3 of us.
Yeah, I didn't realize that we have majority here. Thank you, Daniel, for doing this. So yeah, I was wondering initially whether this coming from a pool of investment instead of IOC things, etc. So that's my question initially. Sometimes some small companies are also struggling to get funding. Need not necessarily be entertained by those models, right? Blockchain and other things. It seems to be good, progressive, but again, not everybody is in there yet. So I'm kind of asking that question. Having said that, I have a question for Brenna. She is talking about partnerships, for that matter, anybody. What are the frameworks that you have in place for building partnerships now? Are you working on that, or are you ready?
So we've got a few different locations in different stages. Our first location is in the US Virgin Islands, and we have a partnership there that's already established between a resort called Livongo and a coral restoration nonprofit called VI Reef Response. Livongo had previously hired the nonprofit to build them a coral garden, but now they want to go further and they want someone on site to talk to the guests and create guest activities and just further engage their guests. So VI Reef Response doesn't have the capacity to create these programs nor the knowledge to do so. So essentially we're coming into this existing partnership, giving our knowledge, and we'll be launching a crowdfunding campaign in July to help finance this support staff member there. We'll be training them and they'll be working at the resort with the nonprofit. So it's essentially a triangle kind of partnership there. In other places like Hopkins, Belize, we have a resort, it's called Hamanasi, that already does a ton of eco activities, but they don't have coral restoration as part of their agenda. So in this situation, we would be going out and finding a partnership. There's an incredible coral restoration group locally called Fragments of Hope, and we'll be reaching out to kind of connect them that are not already connected.
Just to let you know one thing, I'm involved in coral reefs and mangroves restoration because I believe in doing this as a biosensitive thing, and also we don't have to use big technology around it. So perhaps we may also think of building partnership. These would eventually clean the quality of water and improve the quality of the water, and the enzymes are biodegradative. That way the coral reefs and mangroves would grow faster. So perhaps we may figure out partnership there. And I'm working with a group of 20 other organizations who are experts in several of these things. So.
Yeah, mangrove restoration alongside of coral restoration is huge. They're both incredible drivers of ecosystem regeneration as a whole. And so having one without the other is, never as good as having both. So that's awesome.
I love that abundancy mindset that you both bring in on top of the holistic thinking and systems thinking. So Brenna, there was another question here actually from Jordan. If Jordan, you want to go ahead and discuss about the additional tourism angles?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tamara, for letting me ask this question. It's just something that I was thinking of. I really like your angle, Brenna, as to what you're targeting and through basically leveraging tourists, who someone that is in a week will be me, but couldn't come sooner. Have you thought about going after additional angles of tourism, most notably cruises? They tend to dock at a lot of these places. I've been a tourist on cruises many times, and a bunch of times we've gone snorkeling. Not some scuba diving, I'd be a little more obviously certified to do that. But school field trips and other angles like this that are a little bit alternative, but also really used in droves, Airbnbs particularly.
Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely targeting Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian, all the major cruise lines to get them involved once we're set up and established at these resorts. We're also definitely going to involve local education. We're a hybrid business model. So we have a for-profit entity and a non-profit, well, we will have a nonprofit entity, not yet, to do community work like teaching children how to swim and teaching people how to scuba dive, most notably fishermen who are already very adept in the water. And if you teach them how to scuba dive and you can train them on a ton of skills relating to coral restoration, they're already very good at it. Grupo Punta Cana has done this in the past and had great success. So yeah, definitely trying to find ways to engage outside organizations that visit these island nations as well as the local communities all at the same time.
I have a suggestion for all the entrepreneurs here. I'm also a mentor at different incubators, startup incubators in US and abroad. I want you guys to be carefully use the words. In Brenna's case, you have a resort slash hotel, whatever it may be. You might be saying sustainably managed resort or hotel. You don't call it as a sustainable travel, etc. because impact accounting is coming really fast. I'm involved in Texas Sustainable Business Network also as a steering committee member. We are pushing governments to change the wording because common people would get what it is exactly rather than greenwashing and everything else in between. So I suggest all the entrepreneurs to count on these things, and use words wisely. Otherwise, we would be caught up in the middle of the game. It is going to be a PR nightmare. So please pay attention.
I think that's really important. One time I had someone tell me I was so lucky to have a mission behind my business, as if sustainability was just something that was a marketing tool. I think of that often.
I know Anne was trying to get a word in, I think. Anne, would you like to ask your question?
Hello?
Yep.
We can hear you.
me. Perfect. Hello, everyone. Great to hear you and to listen to all your entrepreneur stories. So thank you for that. My question was to know, how do you actually measure your environmental and social impact of your 3 different solutions?
I think we could take the lead here. That's okay. So a lot of what we do at Seashell is just basically valuing the environmental impact of restoration. And so we have a couple steps in doing that. I think the first one is to look at coastal impact data, especially when it comes to coastal resiliency. And then we're going to look at economic and social impact data, and that in regards to tourism, real estate, insurance, health, recreation, and then we're going to go to infrastructure adaptation. So we're going to see like where the solution's coming in, where it wasn't at first, and then finally we're going to see the sort of decentralized valuation and incentivization aspect when you tie in Web3 to all the restoration. And when those come together, you're going to come to a sort of return on impact number through formulaic processes of economic valuations. And there will be a liquid market to further set that. And so, yeah, you have a mix of sort of reputable data and individuals who will sort of judge that data on their own criteria. I think that's at least us. I think, yeah, I don't. Is there any questions on that? I don't.
Thank you.
Brenna, did you have any follow-up, or maybe Nelson?
Sure. Measuring the impact of coral restoration is huge to be able to go out and show governments and more locations that the work that we've done is actually having an impact. So one of the ways to do that is to measure both the biodiversity of a reef before and after outplanting coral plugs from a nursery. And another way to do that is to also measure coral cover. It's a little bit longer of a time scale versus most, other environmental projects, but measuring coral cover before and after outplanting and survivorship of the corals that you outplant is huge to be able to show the impact of the project.
I think it's a very important piece to have kind of lined up. So it's nice to hear that you have that in mind. So Nelson, did you want to tackle that question at all?
Yeah, I mean, talking about, besides the fact that we need to obviously establish the measurements, and then we were talking about earlier, there are areas that many people, including us, we need to measure the flux.
I think we've lost your mic there, Nelson. Sorry, can't hear you. Oh. And everyone else having the same trouble. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay, Nelson. We'll got only time for one more anyway.
Feel free to put it in the chat or keep working on that technical difficulty, because I think we'll go to our last question, which is a really neat one to end on. Michael Penfield put in chat. Would you like to go ahead and ask it?
Oop, Michael's on mute.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. No, I think it was kind of covered, but I think it's what from each of the founders' perspectives, how do you feel that as a founder, you keep in mind focusing on preventing greenwashing when it comes to implementing what your solution is? Because some brands obviously look at that. What's something that each of you could say from your angle you focus on to prevent that when it comes to implementing your solution?
I'd like to take this one first. This is, to me, the power of citizen science. So, you can go to a resort or you can go to a destination and hear about something that somebody is doing and say, great, wonderful, good for you guys. But citizen science is where you actually get involved in these local efforts. You can see the exact impact that you're having, and you have a personal role to play in it, which is not only preventing the idea of greenwashing, like you think that something's happening and it may or may not be, you actually
leave it
firsthand. And that to me is magical. So that's the way that we will definitely be focusing on preventing that.
If I could jump in. So working with Web3's had its criticisms of being sort of destructive to the environment. And I think that's why I think Jordan mentioned it earlier. We want proof of stake over proof of work coins to work with. So there's no mining, and therefore the carbon emissions are way lower. And I also think like primarily what we're doing is actually making an impact. It's not sort of like playing with words or something, anything like that. So I think in that sense, as long as we minimize our own carbon emissions in doing this and actually create actionable change, I think we're not really at risk of greenwashing. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for us as well, the proof is in the pudding. One thing that's interesting about seashells that a lot of our work is frankly visible, where something like carbon emissions are clearly not visible to the naked eye on most cases. I'm sure if you wanted to really go balls to the wall, you could beat me on that argument. But for us, we could see kind of the difference in the buffering of the coast. You could clearly see the difference as far as this Web3 platforms that we'll be leveraging. I've been using, I'm here actually at NFT NYC all week on. I've had quite a few conversations on this, and the impact of the ESG standards seem to be really paramount in people's minds here. So it's something that we're definitely pressing forward with complete focus.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Well, go ahead and wrap us up, Daniel.
Well, thank you all so much for the great questions today. Thank you to Brenna, Ryan, Nelson, and Jordan for all your input. It has definitely been a great and diverse span of discussion. But I encourage you guys, if you want to leave your more info to reach out in the chat, feel free to do so. And for anyone who's joined us today that would love to connect with our startups, feel free to leave your info in the chat as well. But other than that, as I mentioned, we'll be announcing our startup showcase shortly, hopefully tomorrow. And at the same time, just so excited to have everybody along. And we have our last Startups for Sea Change about underwater and regenerative media the week of July 4th. So thank you, Prasad. Yeah, feel free to connect everybody. And I hope you all enjoyed. But thank you so much and have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
All righty. That was fun.
Okay, so the